In 1932, Australia started a unique war that was not against any country or any group, but this war was against the mute bird named Emu, who had shown the stars in the heart of the Australian military. I think it is quite strange that a bird can have such a problem that a whole military operation has to be started against it. But Australia had taken such a step, and it failed miserably. Welcome back to zewtv's videos. Viewers, after World War I, the whole world was going through the Great Depression and Australia was also hit by it. Farmers were not growing anything in their fields because of the gap between demand and supply in the market. The price was so low that the farmers could not even cover their expenses. If this continues, Australia will not have anything left for its own food. To control this, the Australian government forced the farmers to start the production of wheat and promised them that the government will buy wheat from them at good rates. Farmers began to offer lower rates to farmers. In protest, they decided that they would no longer sell the VAT, and that is why they did not harvest the crops. It was no longer the case that the Australian government did not need VAT. She was blackmailing the farmers in a way because they knew that if the farmers did not sell the ready crop to the government, then their crops would be affected by insects. But what did the Australian government know? That the problem was more than insects. The distress was that emus, which are only found in Australia, had their breeding season over. Let them see the prepared wet fields in Western Australia. A group of 20,000 emus entered these wet fields and started eating and destroying the fields overnight. This bird is 5.5 feet long and weighs 45 kilograms. Now 20,000 MAOs is a huge number, and it used to destroy 20 to 25 acres of wet land in just one day. From 300 to 350 acres of land had been lost. This problem was becoming serious. When the government came to know about this, they immediately took action and got rid of the email. In his view, there was only one quick solution to this problem: a military operation. Yes, the Australian government asked the military to launch an operation against the emus. It was a very strange operation. It was a very strange operation that the media called the Grate Emu War. They killed a few trees with machine guns and a few thousand rounds in Western Australia. This task seemed to be a game of his left hand, but by the time the operation started, it started raining in Western Australia due to heavy rains. From the 2nd of November 1932, troops of emus spread over a large area which became difficult to target. Considering this problem, the attack on emus was postponed for a month. A few emus have been seen in the village. By the time the soldiers reached there, the locals pelted them with stones to collect the emus. Instead of gathering in one place, it scattered upside down. Let us tell you here that emus have very strong legs, and she can surprisingly run away at 70 km speed. However, soldiers opened fire on the emus in the same condition. Just as the first attack had failed miserably during the day, only 5 to 7 emu out of 20,000 had died, the first failure of this military operation. They would wait for the emus to approach and then open fire. This time about 1,000 emus entered the fields. When they approached the hidden soldiers, they opened fire. But this time luck was on their side. The emus were dead, the machine gun jammed. Before the machine gun could be repaired, all the emus disappeared again in the fields. I decided to go where there was a large number of emus. If the soldiers had any success, they could have found it here, but this time they noticed something very interesting in the emus. They saw that the emus were divided into separate groups, and each group has a leader who is kind of looking after them. The rest of the emus are busy eating wet fields. But that leader keeps his eyes on the impending danger as the soldiers blink. Those leaders used to drive away all these groups of emus from there. Now the soldiers were tired of chasing them. This war against the emus was heavy for them, as it happens in wars. It was getting heavy as in wars. When the enemy is not controlled in one way, then the strategy has to be changed, and the Australian military also decided to change their strategy to teach a lesson to the emus. Now they made a plan they will install a machine gun behind a vehicle, quickly penetrate a group of emus and then fire on the fleeing gnus from the moving vehicle. And as they thought, it might happen in a real war. But here the enemy is absent. Undoubtedly, the flightless one was a very clever bird, because the vehicle had to run on rough fields, that is, off-road. So obviously it was becoming very difficult for the machine gun operator to target the running emus after firing several rounds. It seemed to be on the right target. The soldiers adopted this strategy, but due to speeding on the off-road, a fleeing emu got stuck in the sparing of the vehicle, due to which the vehicle crashed into the bushes. 2,500 rounds in this attempt. Fires were fired and only 200 emus were killed. Fourth attack and new strategy also failed. The operation was stopped for a while. About 1,000 AMUs were killed. But after firing a total of 10,000 rounds, that means 10 rounds were fired to kill one atomic mass unit. Politicians said that if any medal is to be given for this performance, it should be given to AMUs who managed to cleverly reach 9 out of 10 bullets. Ames was killed during this period. $10,000 was spent on this operation, which is more than $100,000 today. It was a very embarrassing defeat for the Australian military. The operation was called off, meaning that emus had won the war. As time passed, the population of emus increased and farmers were suffering heavy losses every year. This time, the Australian government came up with a new strategy. Divided and introduced the boundary system, i.e. the farmer who obeys the more emus will be given the boundary, i.e. money according to this calculation. This method still worked, and after 2 years in 1934, in 6 months 57 boundaries were claimed. When this news went on the international media, the animal rights organizations made a lot of noise. People began to criticize the Australian government. What would the Australian government do? The avian population in Australia is around 6 to 7 million, and farmers now put up fences around their fields to keep wild animals out, which has become a common practice in Australia. Farmers are not so much in danger from wild animals in Australia, but this war against EVs will always be remembered in Aarhus. It is hoped that this video of zewtv will also be liked and shared by your loving comments. Thank you very much. See you in the next wonderful video.